Welcome to the Israel Now Forum webinar series. I'm Maura Schreier-Fleming, Chairman of the Israel Now Forum Speakers Committee. The Israel Now Forum is scheduled for November the 16th in Plano, Texas. We want to thank our webinar partners, Southwest Jewish Congress and Texans for a Safe Israel. Today's webinar features Dr. Jonathan Schanzer, Executive Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. FDD is a DC-based, nonpartisan research institute founded shortly after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. FDD experts have tracked the networks of US-based organizations that have fueled boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS efforts, and pro-Hamas support on college campuses. FDD regularly provides open source research and analyses to policymakers and the media with the goal of strengthening US national security and reducing or eliminating threats posed by adversaries and enemies of the US and other free nations. Jonathan's research and analysis has been used to bust a $20 billion Turkish-Iranian scheme during the height of the US pressure campaign to halt Iran's nuclear weapons program. His most recent book is Gaza Conflict 2021, and he hosts the FDD Morning Brief on Middle East developments every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Please use the Q&A Zoom feature to submit your questions during the webinar. We'll have time at the end for questions. And now we'll hear from Dr. Schanzer about anti-Semitism on college campuses and who is really behind all the protests there. Jonathan?
All right. Thank you, Maura. And thank you, Susan. Thanks to all of you for joining. I'm going to share my screen so I can walk through a PowerPoint presentation. And it usually takes about 20 minutes, and I'll leave a little time for Q&A after. So I am going to share now. Hopefully it's popping up.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Now I just need to be able to make it go full screen, which is the next major challenge here, and then I will be off and running. There we go. It should be.
That's it.
You got it?
Yeah, that's the
okay. All right. Okay. So bottom line, guys, is we'll start here. It's a tale of two pictures. One is the focus has been, I think, primarily on the campus chaos that we've seen since the war began on October 7th of 2023. So for a year and a half, the focus has been on the campuses themselves. My argument today is that we're looking in the wrong place, that we really need to be looking at an organization called American Muslims for Palestine, or AMP. They are the people that created and trained these campus activists over really the last 25 years, and I'll get through it. The story for us starts actually in 2014, where we started looking at why campus protests seem to be all using the same materials. They were using the same placards and signs. They had the same, apartheid wall that they were bringing to campus, the same eviction notices, a lot of the same tactics and strategies. And it seemed like it was just too coordinated. And so we looked some more, and over a year and a half or so, we really began to realize that none of this was organic or spontaneous, that there was a group called American Muslims for Palestine. And what was amazing to us is that it was founded by and funded by and run by at least 9 different individuals who had worked for or on behalf of Hamas charities that were shut down in the United States. And that was a big eye-opener for us. AMP is now active, of course, they are active in supporting SJP. SJP is on 220 campuses across the United States. That is a huge number. And AMP is not at every one of these campuses, but I will show you that they are on some of them, and that should give you a sign of what is likely going on beneath the surface. Now, I mentioned the 3 charities that were shut down. These are the 3. This is just a little bit of history, and it's important to understand it just so you understand where we're going from here. The first is, you may remember this one because it's based in Texas. Some of you, I understand, or maybe all of you are based in Texas. The Holy Land Foundation, that was based in Richardson, Texas. It was shut down in 2001 by the FBI. They had sent $12.4 million to Hamas, and the FBI raids it, shuts it down, and everybody's sort of giving each other high fives, saying Hamas is no longer going to be able to fundraise in America. By the way, that moment was the thing that made me want to become a terror finance analyst. That bust in the aftermath of 9/11 was a remarkable moment for me and an eye-opener. But at any rate, it turns out that all those high fives were not justified, because the Holy Land Foundation spawned a new organization, or at least that's what the Treasury Department determined. I was working at the Treasury back then in 2006. We froze the assets of an organization called Kind Hearts. Turns out that Kind Hearts was now based in Ohio, not Texas, but it was founded by a bunch of staffers, lower level staffers that used to work for Holy Land. So this is starting to look like a game of whack-a-mole. Now, there's one other organization that is that's notable. It was not shut down by the government. It was actually sued by the family of a guy named David Boim. David Boim was killed by Hamas in the 1990s in a shooting. And the family found this organization. They said, wait a minute, you are providing fundraising and public relations assistance to the Holy Land Foundation. You should not be allowed to exist, because Holy Land was found to be a Hamas charity. So they sued, they won, and they were awarded a $156 million judgment for funding Hamas, and the organization shut its doors. But I want you to remember all of these groups, because they're going to come back to us in just a few minutes. But so just to sum up, the argument today is the three groups on the left are the groups that were shut down for Hamas activity. 9 different people associated with these charities went on to work for AMP. And AMP, the founder and chairman, a guy by the name of Hatem Bazian, was the founder of the first SJP chapter at Berkeley in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and today there are 220 chapters of SJP. You understand this slide, you pretty much understand the argument that we're going to talk about today. Now, people say, oh, well, who are the 9? Here they are. The bottom row is the board and fundraisers. You'll see AMP, everybody's AMP, but they're also IAP, the Islamic Association for Palestine. That's the group that was sued. You see one guy at the bottom there. He was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation case. The top leadership, the senior leadership, you'll see IAP, HLF, Holy Land Foundation, as well as Hatem Bazian, the guy who I mentioned, who founded the first chapter of SJP. He's done some fundraiser speeches for Kind Hearts. So you can see here, this is like, and this, by the way, is not conjecture. This is stuff that we've been able to track. If you look on the right side, there's a document we believe dates to 2006. You'll see the Islamic Association for Palestine has its directors and its host committee for its convention. And you'll see Osama Abu Ershade about 3/4 of the way down on that right side. You'll see his name. He's the current executive director of AMP. This is not, again, this is not conjecture here. We know where these people have worked in the past, and we know where they are now. Now, people have asked about the corporate structure. This is the corporate structure, and it is it's weird. So AMP is a corporate non-for-profit. It is not a 501c3, which means that it doesn't have to disclose everything, right? In the same way that my organization, right? We disclose a heck of a lot. We really, and we try to be as compliant as possible with the IRS. AMP does have a fiscal sponsor, which is called Americans for Justice in Palestine Educational Foundation, AJP, not AMP, but AJP. They are a 501c3. They are the fiscal sponsor for AMP, and AMP in turn supports SJP, which is not registered anywhere in the public document registries of the United States government. It is not a C3. It's not a C4. It's not a corporation. It's not a business entity. It is literally nothing. And that's what makes the funding of this so difficult to track. By the way, there's also this other organization, this little blue one down on the bottom, called Westpac, and they are also a C3, and people give money to them, and it has served as a pass-through to Students for Justice in Palestine. So this is a highly convoluted structure, and it gets even more convoluted because I'll show you the pink entity in the top right. They also have a lobby group. I want to show you a little bit about the lobby group here. They've been around since, I think since 2020. I think this was the first one. This was virtual because it was during COVID, but you'll see Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are among their featured speakers. And you'll see Osama Abu Irshaid, the guy on the two from the end on the right side, Hatem Bazian, two from the left side. These are the leaders, and they're also speaking alongside these members of Congress. Here you'll see, actually, top right, they had a lobby day in Washington 2 weeks after 10/7. And they're on the Hill. You can see the center picture there, about 120 people all lined up on the Capitol steps. They have been very active. And you'll see bottom right, that's the director of AMP. He's at Hakeem Jeffries' office. And we have Jan Schakowsky is top left. They seem to have pretty good access. After I actually called them out on this, I did a testimony back in November at the House Ways and Means Committee. They have started to hide who they meet with. They try not to publicize it anymore because they don't want their people to get called out, and they don't want members to feel like, they're going to pay a price for taking these meetings. Now, people have asked about the money. The money is not easy to track. It was easier back in 2016 when I first started testifying and doing this research publicly. But what I can show you here is a photo that we grabbed in 2016. It was on AMP's Facebook page. They literally have kids holding up these life-size checks and you can see the logo very clearly, the top left of those checks. It says AMP, and it's made out to SJP students in the Chicago area, SJP Northwestern, SJP Loyola, SJP University of Chicago, and on and on. Now, that's what we were able to catch back then. Since then, they've taken down these photos from their website. They don't want people to know who's getting what. There's also this, if you read the little part in yellow, this was from a marketing email that we got in 2014 from AMP. I think they've since figured out who was getting these emails, and we don't get them anymore, but we keep getting on their list. But here, if you look at the bottom, it says in 2014, AMP spent more than $100,000 supporting student activists on campuses across the country. So the past connections are clearly there. Now, they've started to obfuscate some of the money trail, but here's what we can say. The guy on the left, Tahir Herzala, he is the director for outreach and coordination. We believe he is the campus guy. And if you see him on your campus or your kid's campus or your grandkid's campus, it's a good sign that AMP is there. You'll see the center event. This is AMP advertising Hatem Bazian, and he's just speaking at a Muslim Students Association center. But they actually promote him as the founder of AMP and SJP. They're not shy about saying who he is and where he came from. You also see on the left side, this is a bunch of kids that have gone and trained in the Holy Land. And this is AMP sending them. And you can see Jerusalem in the background. Now, today or recently, we have seen, this is just a sampling of what we know. This is Hatem Bazian, again, the founder of AMP and SJP. We can see him giving speeches at Berkeley, at San Diego State, at University of Pennsylvania, University of California, Santa Cruz, University of California, Davis. He is on every one of these campuses, and he is speaking in a formal capacity. He's giving like the keynote, if you will, at these encampments, right? And this is a grown man. This is a man who's like my age, right? He's like 50 years old. And what he's doing on campus, nobody seems to be able to explain. Here, this is also interesting. So Hatem Bazian tweets this in 2023. This is before the war. He's very mad at Jake Tapper from CNN. He says, "You're reporting on Rashida Tlaib." Of course, we know the connection between him and Rashida Tlaib now. He says, "Your reporting on her was racist and anti-Palestinian." The second sentence is key here, folks. "As Jews who believe in human rights and justice, we demand you do better." Hatem Bazian is not Jewish. We believe that he tweeted this out thinking that he was tweeting at via the Jewish Voice for Peace group, which is purportedly Jewish kids that are pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. And it seems that he has a role. What that role is, we don't know, and he's not answered to this. We've seen this guy, Salazar Sor. He's a former Holy Land guy. He has been live streaming the encampments at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So we know that he's there. But then here's where it gets fun, guys. This is the executive director of AMP, formerly the communications guy at the Islamic Association for Palestine. That's the group that was shut down in the Boeing lawsuit. You'll see him on the left side, and it's interesting because AMP is promoting him, and they're saying that he's giving a powerful speech at the encampment press conference. He's at the press conference, so he's clearly an organizer, and he's giving a speech at Columbia, and that's on April 25th. By the way, look at the guy off to the right of him, the guy with the little white beard. Not a student at all, right? Absolutely not. But anyway, next day, April 26th, he is at GW, at their encampment, holding a microphone in the middle of their quad. And then, amazingly, you see a picture of him speaking at GW, same day, as we understand it. But he's had a wardrobe change. He's now not wearing the windbreaker. He's wearing a jacket and button down. And he's on Al Jazeera, where he is being translated live from English to Arabic. And his speech is being promoted there. Now, we've given this briefing a bunch of times to, university presidents and university officials. This is the moment where their mouths drop, because right here we have a screen grab from 2014. The photo is of Osama Abu Ershad, and there's an article that they are quoting from that is anti-Israel and I guess in some ways maybe pro-Hamas, but it is appearing on the Hamas website. But not just any Hamas website. This is the military wing of the self-declared military wing of Hamas. And he appears on that website. And he has yet to explain what he was doing there. We have seen AMP appear with a group called Samidoun. Samidoun is a PFLP front that was, it's based in Canada. It was designated last year as a terrorist organization. The fact that they've collaborated and cooperated, it should be, it's troubling. What exactly they're doing beyond just, collaborating on campus stuff, nobody knows. Maybe nothing, maybe a lot more. People have asked if there's a foreign connection, and there is. These guys have been spending some time in recent years meeting under the banner of a group that is based in Turkey called the Center for Islam and Global Affairs, or SIGA. SIGA, interestingly, is founded and run by a guy named Sami Al-Arian. Sami Al-Arian was a professor at University of South Florida who pled guilty to performing various services for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And he went to jail here in the United States, and then he was deported in 2015 to Turkey. Here you'll see Sami Al-Arian's wife at Columbia at the encampments, and Sami Al-Arian is bragging about how she is there with the Columbia students in solidarity. I actually flagged this on Twitter, and you can see it got 2.4 million views. This was right before I got blocked by Sami Al-Arian. But his wife's not a student. What she was doing there, and by the way, she's at those tents, those tents that everybody knows now were all bought probably in the same place, probably by the same person or the same organization. A lot of coordination going on here. At any rate, here is Sami Al-Arian in the center of a photo. This was taken in 2020. at a SIGA conference, and you'll see Osama Abu Irshad from AMP, the executive director. That's 3 people to the right. We've circled his face. He is at this conference hosted by a Islamic Jihad financier, convicted. There are also 2 other people that we've circled, a guy that is Hamas in Turkey and a guy that is Hamas in Berlin. In fact, the guy on the right that we circled, Majid al-Zir, was just designated by the U.S. Treasury, and the Germans, I believe, just arrested him. There's a lot happening in Turkey with this crowd. You'll see on the right, Osama Abu Irshad is shaking hands with the president of Turkey at the presidential palace. They meet with the ambassador to Turkey here in the United States. And just in case folks have forgotten, Turkey is a top sponsor of Hamas. They're also a member of NATO, which is problematic, but they're a top Hamas sponsor. Just the photo on the left side here is interesting because it actually shows Sami al-Arian and Osama Abu Irshad. This is 2015, on the eve of Sami al-Arian's deportation. And hilariously, Sami al-Arian's daughter, Lena, who you'll see pictured in the bottom center, Lena al-Arian, until I guess about 2 or 3 years ago, used to work for AMP, American Muslims for Palestine.
So, Jonathan,
it all comes full circle.
So knowing all these points as facts, I mean, the U.S. government, this is the first question that came in. Why is the U.S. government not taking more aggressive attitude, since these are known terrorist sponsors and Jews are being targeted?
I will say, I think that certainly over the last couple of weeks, as we've seen violent attacks now on American soil, I think the perspective is probably beginning to change. But, you know, up until now, I think there hasn't been a lot of urgency. I mean, I will tell you, I testified about this, you know, in 2016. I expected Congress to act, nothing. Shared it with the FBI, nothing. I thought we had, you know, a lot of hard evidence, but it's not if you can't point to a crime. And I think I need to be clear here. Everything that I've shown you, you know, we know what they did, some of these people did in the past, but we cannot say they are actively funding terrorism, that they're engaging in terrorism. You know, it seems like there's a lot of stuff that you would kind of say, wow, I don't really want these people, you know, around my kids on campus. I don't really, you know, I wouldn't want them, you know, teaching or influencing young people or even older people for that matter. But that doesn't mean that they're guilty of something. And I think, you know, that's why when you're a think tank, you provide open source evidence. It's not the same as gotcha, smoking gun. We are providing a history of this network.
So if the funding has gone from AMP to a group that's on campus that has committed violence and broken the law, that's not, are you saying that's not enough to arrest people and to have a governmental action?
Look, I think if you can say that these people gave money and you can prove that they gave money and organization and direction to people that have broken the law, and that was the intent, then yes, but I don't have that,
Okay.
right? What I have, again, is we know what they used to do. We know that they're on campus. We know that they're speaking on campus, but I can't say that their money has gone to the beating of a Jewish kid or the destruction of property at Columbia University. I can't go that far, right? It really is up to the FBI if they are interested and if they have cause, to figure this out.
So AMP's money got laundered through the SJP, who then did the violence. So what are your thoughts about the proposed Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a proposed piece of legislation that aims to combat anti-Semitism, particularly on college campuses, by requiring the U.S. Department of Education to use the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism when enforcing anti-discrimination laws.
So look, I think it's obviously important, right? But the question is, what does it solve for as it relates to this?
It
right?
Specifically says what discrimination is, and that definition makes all of these actions illegal.
Well, yes. So you would say you're now guilty of discrimination, and you're pointing that out as it relates to the kids. You need to be able to prove that AMP is somehow giving direction to these kids, and that they are engaging in discrimination in, you know, as a direct result. It's got to be cause and effect. And that's what's so challenging here, folks. And I think I need to make it clear, you know, because I don't have the smoking gun, I can only show you where these people have been over the course of time. What I can show you is that this isn't organic, that it's, you know, that it's not spontaneous, that these people are, they hold, at minimum dangerous ideas. But to be able to show cause and effect that this happened, you need transactions, you need, you need audio, you need video, you need, right? I mean, but hard evidence, which has been, not easy to come by.
Wouldn't it be, though, federal funding of these universities when they host these activities that clearly would violate that proposed law? That would be something.
I think so. I think so. But
okay.
yes, but I think, and by the way, you're seeing the House Committee on Education and Workforce, the Department of Education, the Help Committee on the Senate, and all these other, the DOGE, they're all coming down on these universities like a ton of bricks right now. And for good reason. And I think exactly for the reasons that you just suggested. But how do you get to AMP as such if they are still and I got to say, I don't know if they're still the primary driver of all of this. They certainly were at the beginning of this. And I don't think they've stopped. I just think that some of this may have also taken on a life of its own.
And they probably morphed to another organization.
There's a lot of that.
We've heard probably about the valedictorians and the student speakers who have hijacked their graduations with unauthorized speakers. Do you think universities are going to step up and prohibit them from getting their diplomas and, more importantly, jobs? And I might point out that Harvard did suspend students, but then they retroactively revoked the suspensions.
Yeah, I think that the Trump administration pressure on these universities is slowly but surely, changing how this is all, sort of shaping out in the public sphere. They are actively trying to discourage a lot of this stuff now. Whether people get held to account by the university is one thing. There's also, there are a lot of private efforts, as I understand it, underway to make it harder for these people to get jobs afterwards. In other words, they're looking to have accountability here. And so I think that's some things that we should keep an eye on. I have to say, though, I am personally, I don't want to say that I'm forgiving of these students, because I think they're doing grave harm to our country. And they are singling out, Jews and they are engaging in destruction of property, intimidation, and worse. But I'm less interested in the students. I am way more interested in the organizers and the funders. This is, of course, sort of my background and what I do. But I want to get to the root of this and pull it up. Mm-hmm. And that's where my focus is. I'm a lot less worried about one, jerk from Columbia or from Harvard, and way more concerned about the adult jerks who are, absolutely raising money and promoting this. And brainwashing kids and really doing unbelievable harm to this country.
You mentioned the funding of this. So we know Shabbos Kestenbaum is suing Harvard for Title VI violations. Are there any other legal strategies that you think can be used to stop this anti-Semitic, Muslim, and other groups on?
Yeah, I think, by the way, I think Shabbos got a settlement for this. I think the case has actually ended, if I'm not mistaken. I think Harvard settled with him. But I think though that we see actually there's a Greenberg-Traurig case that was filed against AMP for material support. There's the Boehm case that's still ongoing, where the family sued AMP, or rather IAP, but then they went and they said, wait a minute, you're the same organization, you're the same people, you've just moved to some other place now, so how can you do that? You escaped that $156 million judgment, you owe us money. And so that case is out there. There are a bunch of cases right now. Lawyers, that's the one thing that the Jewish community seems to have in abundance. And so they're suing everybody in every way possible. I don't think, by the way, that all of these things are going to be successful. I think they're going to be messy, and probably a bunch of them are going to be thrown out. But I do see that there's a lot of pressure being brought to bear.
Well, you can stop screen sharing. We have one last question. Trump has put together an October 7th task force, and that's a joint effort between the FBI and the Department of Justice to look for causes of anti-Semitism, and I would assume address them. What do you hope to come out of that task force? What do you expect to come out of that task force?
Look, I met with some of the people from the task force, and I think they're good people. I think they need to find another gear. I think they've been, not quick enough, right? This task force has been around for 5 months, and I've not yet seen an arrest. I've not yet seen a major law enforcement action. And so I think, we just need to, we need to see more. Now, granted, a lot of these things, the government investigations, any legal investigation is going to take a lot of time. But I think we're running out of it. I mean, I think the question is how many more people need to be killed or firebombed or intimidated. This is the question that I ask right now as we struggle in the wake of the murder of those two embassy employees, as we, watched in horror what happened to is elderly people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who were firebombed by this Egyptian national the other day in Boulder. So we are, again, I think we're happy to see that task force is there, but they need to speed things up because we've reached a crisis point.
Yeah, you're right. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time and that very compelling presentation and for the incredible work that you and the FDD do. And thank you all for attending. We're looking forward to seeing you again at our next webinar, which will be Wednesday, July 16th at noon. The Hillel president at University of Texas at Dallas will present the campus crisis today, and it is shocking. And see you in Plano, Texas on November the 16th for the all-day Israel Now Forum, where you can hear more experts on Israel today. And the website is israelnowforum.org. Bye for now.